Well, thank you so much for being a part of House Church and just being a part of a biblical community. And, you know, it's crazy to think that we are less than 20 days away from Christmas. And I know the moment I said that, you probably just got a lot of anxiety. The good news is we're still in our series called Under Pressure. And that's what we're talking about today, is how to deal with the pressure that we're carrying around. Because my personal belief is that the month of December is probably one of the most difficult months for us to navigate. So there's so much happening, you know, the stress of finances, trying to figure out how to pay for Christmas, how to deal with our relatives. Are we traveling? Are we staying? Are we hosting? And then not only that, like if you're like me, which many of you are, man, you've lost someone that you love. And so Christmas and the holidays just really aren't the same. But yet our culture says that it's the most joyful time of the year. So here we are under all of this pressure, trying to fabricate a smile and just act like everything's okay. And we're trying to figure out what to do. And that's really what we're talking about today. And you know, a quick story, when I was in high school, a long story short, I was on the football team and there was another guy that was helping kick with me, and coach got mad at us and made us do bear crawls. And so in the middle of the bear crawl, this guy who was much bigger than I am, and when I say he was hairy, like he was hair, it's like he had a matted carpet, a wet matted carpet across his chest and belly. I know you just ate in house church, so this is probably sitting really well with you, and he was just like, it was a hot day. And so we're doing our bear crawls, and he thought it was going to be a great idea to jump on my back with all of his sweat and his hair and weight. And literally, it was the most disgusting moment ever. But what happened is when he jumped on my back, I was then carrying like 220 pounds of weight that I wasn't ever intended to carry. And so that weight just crushed me. Like it literally made me do a face plant. And it's just an illustration of where I think a lot of us are today, is that you might be carrying some weight that you were never intended to carry. And if we're not careful, that weight is going to crush us. So what are some of the weights that you might be carrying around? Well, if you were to be honest with me and honest in house church, it might be the weight of marriage. And marriage is one of the greatest gifts that God's given us. But if you've been married longer than 2 seconds, you know that it's work. And it takes energy, it takes work, it's stressful, it's weighty. And then the moment that marriage gets a little rocky, man, it just like wreaks havoc. Like it just starts to infiltrate every other area of our life, and it becomes weighty. It's something we're always thinking about. It could be finances. A lot of folks are trying to figure out, like, do we get Christmas presents or do we pay the bills? Are we going to be able to do the travel team or not? Are we going to be able to buy our kids a car and afford them to go to college, or are we not? So now there's these calculated decisions in the back of your head trying to figure out what to do with finances. It's a weighty thing. And so there's marriage, there's finances, there's work. Some folks are unemployed. Some folks are trying to find jobs. There's the comparison trap, trying to figure out, you know, like comparing, am I being a good enough husband? I mean, compared to them, they're doing great. They're providing more than I am. And maybe about the wife, like, am I being a good enough wife? Am I supporting my family well? Am I providing? There's just all this comparison that goes on. And then, I mean, there's loneliness, there's fear. There's a lot of different weights that we're carrying around. And if we're not careful, these weights are going to crush us. And so what do we do with all of this weight? Well, Jesus speaks to it in Matthew chapter 11. And it's a verse that we've kind of hit on a couple of times, but today we're really just going to unpack it. And in Matthew chapter 11, this was a revolutionary teaching from Jesus, where he literally, these words, it flipped everything on its head. It changed the paradigm. It changed the teaching. And I'm hoping that it'll be a revolutionary teaching for you as well. Because what Jesus is telling them, because you got to know the context real quick, is that all the teachers of the law, the Pharisees and scribes, everybody, what they were teaching was the law. Teaching, hey, if you abide by the regulations of the law, then you can have a right standing with God. The only problem was that it was impossible. Like, there was no way that we could earn a right standing with God. That's why Jesus came, to do the work for us. Not to abolish the law, but to fulfill the law. And what Jesus is telling them, this is the weight that they were carrying, is the weight of the law, all the regulations. And what Jesus says, he says in the midst of that, he says, come to me. All who are weary. Are you weary? Are you tired? Are you worn out? Come to me, all who are weary, all who are burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. How amazing would that be? For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. And a few things I want us to take for this is the first thing is the command that Jesus gives us. He says, hey, come to me. Who can come? All who are weary, all who are burdened. And so are you tired? Are you worn out? Are you just hanging on by a thread? Are you anxious? Are you lonely? Are you fearful? He says, yes, you come to me. All who are weary, all who are burdened. Like you can come to Jesus. And here's the beautiful thing about that statement is that Jesus is the only person in human history who can offer himself as the universal solution to all of our problems. That's just mind-blowing. And so the command for you and I is to come. And it's for all people, all of humanity to come to Jesus. And then there's an invitation, which is to take my yoke upon you and to learn from me. And the yoke was this harness that they would put around cattle to help the master could steer them and those type things. And in the first century, the Jewish students, teenagers, college students would essentially say, I'm yoked to my teacher. I'm an apprentice to my teacher. I'm learning from my teacher. And what Jesus is saying is he's saying, hey, I want to be your teacher. Hey, come walk with me. It's an invitation to walk with Jesus and to learn from Jesus, to let him teach you a new way of living and a new way of life. Because to them, to the Jews, you know, the law, it only revealed their sin. It couldn't remove it. And what Jesus came to do was to fulfill the law and to remove our sin. And so this was a massive invitation to walk with Jesus, to learn from Jesus, to be an apprentice to Jesus. And then the last part of that is the promise. So you had the command, which is to come, the invitation, which is to walk with Jesus. And then the promise is that if we do that, Jesus says, I will give you rest. I will give you rest. And that's the promise that you and I need to grab a hold of, is that we can actually find rest when we come to Jesus and when we start to walk with Jesus and obey Jesus and to learn from Jesus. And then what he promises is that he will give us rest. And I believe there are a few practical things that we can do is one, to come to Jesus. And what does that mean? It means just open-handed surrender. And maybe you've never done that ever in your life. Well, let tonight be the night that happens, where you come to Jesus and you surrender your life to Christ. But it's also meaning where you surrender all the weight and the burden of the things that you're carrying around. It means another application is to start to walk with Jesus every day, to start to obey him, to start to follow him and to learn from him every single day. Another one is to share your burdens. And that's what House Church is designed, is that you would have a safe place to not fake it till you make it, because you know the problem with that? You're not going to make it. But it's a safe place for you to share each other's burdens and do what Galatians 6:2 says, which is to not only share burdens, but to carry each other's burdens. And then lastly is this. If you do all of that, then do the one thing I don't know that any of us do well, which is anticipate the promise. What does anticipate really mean? Anticipate is to look forward to. It's expectation. It's a hopefulness. And so have anticipation for the promise. And the promise is this, is that Jesus will give you rest.